You're listening to Thunder Quack Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Mike. Just a real quick announcement before you guys get into the episode proper. We're not gonna have advertisements anymore on the podcast. It's gonna be all ad free for everybody, which because just the ads weren't working out for us. It wasn't really what I had kind of envisioned. It wasn't the ads didn't really make a lot of sense, and although the revenue was good, I don't think that it wasn't a good fit. So we're gonna obviously lean back on the Patreon support, but that means that our tiers are gonna change around a bit. So with that, our $5 tier, which was previously our ad-free tier, it's not going to be ad-free anymore, obviously, because all of the episodes are ad-free now. But you'll get a bonus episode every month. And that episode will sometimes be me by myself. It'll sometimes be me with a guest. It's actually kind of, if you think about what I was doing with the quarantine zone stuff at the beginning of quarantine back in March and April and into May, it'll be like that. It'll basically be exactly that. And you'll get at least one of those a month. To fill in the weeks where Amanda and I take a week off from the regular podcast. So that'll be a bonus that is only available to Patreon supporters at the $5 tier and above. $1, as always, will get you the episode early on Tuesdays. Same as always. So there's no change there, but the $5, $10, and $20 tiers will now all get the bonus episodes. So that's something that might be of interest to you. And if it is, you can head to patreon.com/thunderquack and adjust your pledges accordingly. And hey, if that means you're adjusting down to $1 because you're really just paying for the ad free, then that's fine too. We appreciate everybody who supports us in whatever way that they can, even if that is just downloading and listening to the episode. It all matters. It's all important. And like always, just be sure you leave a rating and a review on the podcast service of your choosing, because that to me is the most important thing you can do to help us grow the audience. And then we'll take it from there. If people want to support us on Patreon, they can do that. If they want to support us with merch, they can do that as well. So thank you to everybody who has been supporting us. Thank you to everybody who did get behind it. I know like the ad-free stuff was a really big motivator for a lot of people, I think, to pledge on Patreon or to increase their pledge. I hope that the bonus episode is as much of an incentive. And as always, like I always say, we are open to feedback. If there are other Patreon incentives that you would like to see from us, just let me know. Just hit me up on Twitter at ArkWolf, ARKWULF, or you can message us through Patreon or whatever. There are tons of different ways to get in contact with us. You can find us online all over the place, and let us know what you would like to see over on Patreon, what kind of rewards you'd like. With that, here's the episode.
This is the Thunder Quack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunder Quack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunder Quack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunder Quack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get early every Tuesday over at patreon.com/thunderquack, just like our Patreon producers, Brian Murawski and JJ Samuel, do every week. Or you can wait and get it late every Friday on podcast services across the galaxy. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Conkin. Welcome back, Mike.
Yeah, I'm back. Last week was rough. I don't know how it happened. And I shouldn't count my chickens just yet because I could still get hit by this thing. Everybody else in the house got sick, but I don't know. Maybe I did get sick, but because everybody else was already sick, it was like it was like the adrenaline sort of thing of like you can't stop. Like you don't get to stop. Like there are
Just have to keep going.
these two children literally require your attention in order to survive. One more so than the other, but definitely both of them.
I would find it funny if you were talking about Kara needing more help than Cassie. There's something amusing about that little toddler.
Yeah, and Crystal was down for the count. Like she got it rough. I don't really remember the last time she hit quite that hard. It was not COVID. The three of them got tested, so we know that it wasn't that. It was just a nasty.
Oh, does
cold
a
/
baby COVID test, is it the same as an adult COVID test?
Yeah, but because the distance to the back of their nostril is much shorter, it doesn't take as long. So this is a tidbit that maybe not everybody knows, but that I always find to be a not so fun fact. Our noses and our ears keep growing. They don't stop. So that's why like old people have big noses and ears. Like they
I don't know if I'm excited by this fun fact. Is it fun or
it's
sort of weird?
that's why I said it's not a fun. It's a not fun fact. But yeah, like it's not like they don't grow at like a crazy rate like they do when you're like developing as a kid. But because they're cartilage, they do kind of just keep going. But as an adult, like your nasal passage is a lot longer than it is as a child. Like even like proportionally, it's not quite the same. And the older you get, the longer your nose is gonna get. Like the bigger your nose is gonna get, so the further it's gonna be. So getting back there to the back of the sinus cavity where they need to do the scrape for the test is a lot harder on an adult than it is on a kid. And especially on a 1-year-old like Cassie. Crystal said like it was like a second. Like they like popped the Q-tip or what, like it's not a Q-tip, but you know what I mean? Like the swab in and then out, and it was like, okay, done. And it was pretty much the same for Kara. Of like, it was like they say on the website, there's like a whole thing to prep your kid. That it's like count to 5 and it'll be done.
And that was
Crystal was helping Kara, like sort of holding her still. And as they were getting ready to do it, like they were like, okay, we're about to do it. And Crystal was like, okay, Kara, now you're gonna count to 5. And before Crystal got to 1, they were like, yeah, we're done. So awesome. That was good. I mean, like Kara definitely didn't like it. She was pretty upset about it when she got home, but I mean, like no lasting damage. I don't think any permanent trauma. I don't know. We'll find out in 30 years when she's billing us for
COVID damages.
For the psychiatry bills that she's the therapy. But hey, look, we're all gonna need it. So this whole thing is just keeps going and it just keeps getting worse. But
well, everybody keeps talking to me about it, about how it's getting worse. But you know what also helps? Not Googling it, because I am like the dude from The Matrix eating steaks and just living in my ignorant world.
I think that there's a balance there. I think that there's an important balance, as all things, as both Mr. Miyagi and Qui-Gon Jinn would want you to understand that there's an important balance in life and to all things. And I think that it's very healthy to take breaks from this whole thing. And sort of like shut off social media and the news and all that and walk away from it for a sec and pretend like it doesn't exist. But it's also very important to stay informed so that you know what to say when an ill-informed individual starts spouting nonsense in front of other impressionable people.
Oh no, I haven't checked my app in a while. This is not good. This line is going way up.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be watching this app a little bit more. We didn't flatten no curve.
Well,
What?
we did flatten the
we
curve.
did, actually, until,
and then summer happened and everybody went,
Wow.
well, I would rather have fun than be safe.
But we were okay for the beginning of July. It is not going down. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is now it's just bumming me out.
The numbers are not great. And with kids going back into school and a lot of industries opening back up, like, I mean, people going on film sets and it's like a lot of people are getting sick. So that's one thing that I've been.
But we're getting
keeping
another
an eye
season
on.
of The Witcher, Mike. So you
Yeah,
win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's terrible. I'm
Yeah.
so flippant.
No, you mean that. You mean that.
I mean, like,
as you are mocking the people who think that way.
yeah, yes.
I mean, Greg Miller posted a thing on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, of like a college basketball game that he was watching, and it was like it said there was like a little like sub headline underneath the Missouri their team name or whatever that said 7 players out with COVID-19, and it was like, maybe you shouldn't be playing basketball then. Maybe we should shut this down if you've got 7 players on your team that have come down with COVID-19.
Oh my god, on one team there's 7 players? What?
Yeah, on this one
That's
college
scary. I'm kind
basketball
of like,
team.
people are overreacting. If there's 7 players with COVID in all of college basketball, like, maybe
Yeah.
things in proportion. 7 players on one team?
On one team.
Come on.
Because all it takes is
That's like
one.
half a team. How many
It
people
takes
are
one
on
person
basketball?
to be infected, and we don't need to labor this. I think that our audience is fully aware of the seriousness of the situation. Before we get into like geeky stuff, though, just while we're kind of on this train, I'm just gonna say 2 things. It's not really our place to dissect everything that's gone down with Breonna Taylor.
No justice.
Yeah. I think that there are much better places for you guys to go and get information on that. And much more important voices to listen to when it comes to that. So we won't clog the digital airwaves with our, I'm going to go ahead and speak for both of us, our ill-informed opinions on that issue, other than knowing that it is an issue and that there is a problem. And when a wall is more important to the justice system than a human life, that's
upsetting.
This is a serious problem
Yep.
that needs review, let's say, in the nicest terms.
Mm-hmm. Or revolution, whichever one you choose.
Or revolution, yeah. I mean, that's really the reality of it. But all of that to say, like, go again, there are better voices than us, and I'll do my best to go on Twitter and retweet some stuff with the Thunderquack and with my own Twitter account. But go in and donate. Bail funds are one of the most important things right now. Excuse me.
Supporting people that are out there in the streets.
Yeah, because I don't have the ability to be out protesting, and obviously we're in Canada, so I don't know how much good it would do, other than solidarity.
Canada could take over the states and therefore reform the justice system through that way.
Hey, that's
so,
I'm thinking of running for prime minister, and that's going to be my platform.
It basically is vote for me so that we can get rid of the American. Oh, I'm sorry. You were talking about a serious topic, and I turned it into malarkey.
No, it's all good. There's room for levity here.
Okay.
This is a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like go support those bail funds, particularly in it's Louisville, right? In Kentucky. I think that's where
over. I don't know. Yeah, I keep.
I mean, like there are obviously protests all over, but I think that a lot of it's centered there right now.
There's some. Yeah, I think we did a podcast earlier in the year where I think we listed a bunch of different. There was a few different organizations that were doing
Look,
some really awesome things. Also, Colin Kaepernick has a really cool organization as well about.
I'm sorry. What did you just call him?
I'm sorry.
Colin Kaepernick? Kaepernick.
Okay,
Kaepernick.
Kaepernick.
Yeah, not Copernic. He's not Copernicus. It's not.
Whatever. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You made me think that I just called him something completely wrong, but mispronunciation. I'll take full blame for that. Apologies. But
anyways,
also,
yeah. I mean, I would say like the easiest thing is to just go to Black Lives Matter, their Twitter, their Instagram, whichever, and you'll find all sorts of resources that you can be supporting. Mm-hmm. It's all really, really important stuff right now. The other thing is, if you're an American and you are listening to this, I think that the voter registration deadline already passed. So we I think we've missed the boat on.
That was our voter registration.
No, I think that theirs did as
Americans
well.
Americans as well,
yeah. But if not, I mean, like, look it up. We're Canadians. It's not our job to know when your voter registration. No, if I say that, then it's also not our job to say what I want to say, which is,
vote.
I'm going to reference Greg Miller for the second time in this episode. Kind of Funny just did an episode last week where the focus of it was voting for Joe Biden, and Greg Miller basically said to his audience, and to his friends, essentially, vote for Joe Biden. And if you're one of the people that is like, oh, I can't vote for him because he's creepy Joe. Yes, there are definitely some things there that need to be addressed. Nobody's saying that he didn't do some definitely wrong stuff. We don't need to get into all of these things, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like there are reasons to be critical of Joe Biden. I don't deny that, but right now is not a time to dissect that frog, because that frog is the only one that can kind of put things back to at least some sort of a semblance of order from the chaos. So what he basically said was, vote for Joe Biden. I don't care if you don't agree with his policies necessarily. If you're not a voter, like if you're an apathetic person who doesn't vote, whatever, like as a personal favor, please vote for Joe Biden. And I'm going to say the same thing. I don't think that it's any surprise to anybody that that's who I would promote. I mean, he's not my first choice. Elizabeth Warren was 110% my first choice for the president of the United States of America. I think that the world would be a lot better place if someone like her was in charge. After her would be Bernie. I really wanted it to be a Warren Sanders ticket. That would have been one that I think a lot of us could have gotten behind. But we're in the situation that we're in, and it's not a lesser of two evils. It is literally the fate of a democratic republic in the balance, hanging in the balance, and not voting for Joe Biden is the same as voting for Trump, and voting for Trump is the same as voting for Adolf Hitler. I don't know. Let's name some other despots, like Mussolini, well,
Bolsonaro even is doing terrible stuff in Brazil right now. It's like, this is the time of despots as well. Yeah. And not to get too political, but as much like Canada and America,
get too political.
Canada
it is the
and
time
America
to get too political.
Are so tied together, and there are people that are losing their rights because we're waffling about in like small things when big things are at stake. I don't know. It's a silly thing, but there's a town in really close to us called Point Roberts, which is technically Washington, and that entire city has been decimated basically because they can't deal with not having Canadian tourists. Like, an entire town is basically going to become a ghost town because there's no way for them to recover. Like, there is a small example, but it's like there's a symbiotic relationship between the States and Canada.
And that is happening to Point Roberts because the rest of the country is out of control So the federal policy on our side is the border is closed to non-essential travel, right? In a better world, I don't even think we need it to be a perfect world. In a better world, a slightly better world, where it was handled properly and not conspiratorially downplayed to affect somebody else's bottom line. Don't worry, that part of it will come out soon, I'm sure. That there were financial reasons why Trump made the decisions that he made. Things would be I mean, no different than they are here, because I don't think that we really have it under control.
Oh no!
I think that we are we're in a better position than a lot of places, but at the same time, like, it is still wear a mask, right? Yeah. Like limit contact. Don't only go out if you have to. Like, it's like and I want to go to movie theaters too, but like not at this price. It's
so I want to shift a little bit in that, because before we started talking about the like real hard issues, there was just something like with cases rising. One of the things that has been really interesting or difficult for me is the slow gradation of me understanding what my limits are in the new normal and how I can exist ethically in this world that exists currently. And that started with 2 or 3 weeks ago going to get my hair done at a salon, because I hadn't gotten my hair done since last November. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this choice and I'm going to go and I'm going to try to be as safe as I can. And it's been 2 weeks and I like things were fine. But part of that though was me being like, there are things that I'd really like to do and I want to see if I can do it safely. And I was with my friend and I was like, oh man, I really want to go to Indigo. I just haven't been to Indigo or Chapters or like a bookstore to really make myself feel good since March. And as I was walking with her, I was like, okay, I'm just going to pop in and get a bubble tea really quickly, though, and then I'll come back out. Because we were, like, walking around and it was dinner time. And she's like, how have you convinced yourself ethically that it's okay to go and buy a bubble tea, but it's not okay for you to go to a bookstore? And there was a thing where I was like, well, yeah, but it was like dinner. And I realized that it was just like this arbitrary rule that I had created for myself where somehow, because it was a food item, and it's like, it's not like I'm being, like I'm wearing my masks and I'm using my hand sanitizer and there's not very many people in stores anyways. So I did make a choice where I'm kind of like, we have to still live a little bit. And so one day I went at, 7 o'clock at night. So like just before the store is closing, because I don't like shopping when there's busy people anyways. And I actually did. I went and wandered around a bookstore for a little bit. And it made me feel real good. And it was a thing where I'm kind of like, I wanted to do that. And it was something that I just did. So I totally understand where people are at when they're like, how do you live ethically in this world right now where people are being told to not go? So, I mean, on the counter of that, I did that one thing last weekend. And then this weekend literally didn't leave my house. So I don't know, maybe that's called balance or something. But I am just curious about how I can sit here on a podcast where we're like, don't go outside for anything unnecessary. And it's like, well, I went to a bookstore. Like,
but I mean, that I don't think that that's unnecessary. I think they saying we're going to go to the beach and have a beach day is somewhat unnecessary. And I think that's one of the places where people got into trouble this summer is like, well, we're gonna go have a party at the beach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, parties and stuff.
And not really paying attention to the 6 feet and not really keeping your group small and consistent. Right. And I think that was one of the biggest things is that people were like, hey, I'm only hanging out with like 10 people. And it's like, yeah, but last night you were hanging out with a different 10 people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like in a different group of 10 people. Like it has to be consistent and you can expand your bubble. We can. This is the other thing. It's not the same everywhere. Yeah. Some regions are more dangerous than others and people don't quite understand that. So people go like, well, if you're in this place, then you can't go at all. Right. And if you're in this place, well, yeah, we'll go grab dinner and then go to a park to eat, right? We're not going to sit in a restaurant. Which we did that a lot over the last couple months of summer. or we'd like grab McDonald's and
yeah.
then go to the park and,
Yeah.
and hang out in the park away from
Wendy's.
everybody else.
Wendy's for me, it was awesome.
Yeah, it's like so there were adaptations and stuff like that are safe and ethical, I think. But it's the people who went like, oh, I can hang out with up to 50 people. Like I can have an event with up to 50 people. I'm going to go to a party this weekend. And I'm going to go to a party next weekend. And I'm going to go to a party the weekend after that. And I'm going to go to parties in between as well. Right? And it's like, and it's a different group of people. It's not the same 50 people every time. And all it takes is one person not knowing that they've got it and going to 3 parties with 50 people. And now 150 people have been exposed because of one vector, right? Like,
right.
It's and again, like, we don't really need to labor this because I think that our audience is fully aware of this stuff. We've talked about it at length.
I think it's all just like understanding how to be like responsible and do less harm in the world than as much as you can.
Yeah. Right? So I think popping into a bookstore to browse for 20 minutes, getting a book and then going home is fine. I think that like, that's not a big deal. Going like, I've had my haircut, I think 3 times since my hairstylist like opened back up. So but every time I do, it's like I wear the mask the whole time. It's in and out. In fact, 2 out of the 3 times that I went, I was literally the only one in the salon getting my hair cut.
That's so nice. Yeah, for me it was like there was like 2 people that came in while I was there.
That's by nature of my schedule and UA's schedule, because I when we just worked it out, it was like, well, I can be there at 7:30, and it's like, well, the mall's closed at 7, but we can still technically be open, sort of thing.
Nice.
So everybody else was gone, and I was able to get my haircut. So, I've been lucky in that sense, but I've also walked around the mall and browsed in stores and stuff like that.
Right.
Like so
it's not like blanket statements. I think it's just everybody just.
I think it's just being thoughtful about it and conscious about it. I think it's being a reasonable, sensible human being, and I think it comes down to the core component, which is why I say it's not just important, but I would consider it a personal favor if you weren't planning to vote for Joe Biden, to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and to vote Democrat on the other tickets, the House and Senate, whatever else is going to be up. I don't know how it works with your guys's federal elections in the states, but whatever is on the ticket, if you can vote Democrat as much as possible, that would be a very a big deal to me personally. If that means anything, I don't know if it does. I don't know if we have a big enough audience for that to mean anything, or if I'm talking to people who were going to do it anyways. But the what I was getting at is like, we all need to act with a little bit more thoughtfulness and compassion towards other human beings. And a little bit less selfishly, which is difficult, and it's an everyday thing. And you're like a lot of things, you're gonna stumble and you're gonna fall and you're gonna screw up and you're gonna be selfish one day and go like, no, I don't care, I'm gonna go do what I want to do. Yeah. It's not letting that be an excuse to give up on being decent. Right? Because everybody cracks. I mean, like, this is a thing that I think any parent can relate to. You don't want to scream at your kids, right? You definitely don't want to do things like grab them by the hand and jerk them or whatever, right? Like any of like that physical stuff. It does happen every once in a while, and that doesn't make you a bad parent. It doesn't make you an abusive parent. I mean, like, well, hitting your kid is a problem, but like there's a I guess like a fine line there, but people fall into this trap of like, oh no, I did the wrong thing. especially I think our generation has been raised with a lot of like the sensitivity stuff and whatever of like, oh no, I've now damaged my child irreparably, and that means that I'm a bad parent. And it's like, no, you're a human being, and maybe you had a rough day. Maybe you didn't get any sleep the night before because the 1-year-old was up for 4 hours in the middle of the night. So you snapped at the 4-year-old. Like it happens, and you just kind of move on. And I think most parents, like I said, they understand this, because they have to deal with it. And you can't like wallow in, oh, I did a bad thing, and so, you know, I'm a bad person. And I think it's the same with all the COVID stuff of like, it's very easy to get into a headspace of like, oh, I shouldn't have gone there, or I forgot my mask and I went in anyways. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, well, just don't forget your mask next time. Right. Like, just do better next time. And I just think in life in general, just do better. Right? Like, it's not about always doing good. It's just about doing better next time. I'm
watching The Good Place, and you have no idea how relevant that is.
Yeah, it absolutely comes out of that morality, right?
Right?
Of rewarding people for wanting to improve. But it is something that we as a society that we need to promote, and we need to reward people for when we see it, because we don't. And I mean, like, all you have to do is look at criminal justice in Western society. Really, I mean, like, all over the world. But you just look at it and you go, like, we don't reward people for doing better. Somebody makes a mistake once, and we punish them for it for the rest of their lives. And there are certain things. Well, I'm not talking about murder. There's certain things that I think that we have to draw a line. But I mean, like, let's talk about like drug offenses and stuff like that, where it's like, so many people, they get caught up in that stuff because it's a way of surviving, right? Because of other societal issues that aren't being dealt with, and it just creates more problems. But now there's an industry around it, so now that industry promotes I guess that's the wrong way to phrase it. They don't promote rehabilitation. They actually promote, the people going the other way and becoming institutionalized, and not being able to exist in the real world with other human beings when they're released, so that they just end up back in the prison system and keep getting their money, because an empty bed doesn't make them any money. Man, we are so far afield, but all of this stuff, these are all problems, and I'm not saying that Joe Biden hasn't contributed to a lot of these problems over the last few decades. I do think that Joe Biden is the type of person that you can have a conversation with and say, hey, in 2020, not anymore. And I think that Kamala Harris is very similar, of like, and maybe it's just because of their political agendas. I don't know. I don't know them as people. I do know that their ideologies are much more in line with my own than the criminals that are currently occupying the White House and taking advantage of everything they can to make more money, steal from the working poor who already don't have anything. To just continue to subjugate and take advantage of people. And I mean, like, most important, Trump's gonna do anything he can to stay in office, because it's the only thing currently protecting him from going to jail. Because the second he's not president anymore, he can be indicted. And once he can be indicted, you better believe there are hundreds of people in law enforcement just waiting. Because now, like, all of his stuff has been drug out into the daylight. I mean, like, the stuff with the taxes is just, people are acting like that's like, it's like some big revelation that he paid $750 in income tax. What was that, in like 2017, 2018? to me, that's like one of the least of his offenses. Like he is like he's a evil criminal. He's a supervillain in the White House. And
I just don't understand how people don't understand that rich people don't pay taxes.
Yeah,
like that there's ways that you just don't pay taxes.
Yeah,
like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like frustrating to me. We'll be done talking politics now because it's making me sad.
Yeah,
but
we can be.
Yeah.
Vote for please vote Democratic in this election. I know that for some people listening that's going to ruffle feathers, and I don't. This is the end, and this is not a value judgment on you as a person for wanting to believe in the Republican Party. I get it. I totally get it. There are certain things in those ideologies. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the Republican sentiment regarding abortion, but I do understand how another person can feel that way. I do understand that there's religious stuff tied into that. There are other moral ideologies that are different from my own that need to be respected. But that's not what we're talking about here. And they're going to try and make it about issues like that. But it's not about those issues. This is about children in cages. This is about, the eugenics that's going on in ICE facilities that we haven't talked about on this podcast that we don't need to get into.
Yeah.
But obviously the stuff with Black Lives Matter and police brutality and the militarization of the police and everything that's happened over the last 3 or 4 months. Really, I guess it's like 5 months now, isn't it?
It's just like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't think it's making the world a better place to care too much about certain pigeonhole issues that really just when you look at what it's masking, at the end of the day, there's certain things that I don't care what you argue. If part of that argument includes that you have to support racism or you have to support,
bigotry,
you have to support
yeah.
Something that is making the world decidedly lesser, regardless of the one issue that you're talking about. It just invalidates your whole point, and I just think that it's like, why would we want to live in the world that we think is just like not making it better?
I think to boil that down, if your one issue is more important to you than another human being's right to live, that's a problem. And I really hope that we don't have any listeners, anybody in our community that falls into that camp. And I do believe that voting Republican in this specific instance is a vote against human rights. And it's a vote for it. The Republican Party doesn't exist without democracy, and voting for the current incarnation of the Republican Party with Donald Trump as its president, that is a vote against democracy. You will be ensuring that it's going to be a lot harder to get back to something resembling a democratic government. And I don't mean democratic as in the party. I mean in terms of like an ideology, a way of doing things, people's voices meaning something, because they are doing everything they can to take that away right now. So, and there are conservatives up here trying it too, and thankfully, I think
all over
because we don't have a two-party system, it's a
pile.
lot harder for them to do it. It's not impossible, so we still have to be vigilant.
It's kind of hard. I don't know. You weren't on the podcast last week when we ranted about the BC malarkey election that's happening right now and how that is decided. Anyways, I can't too much.
Any system is gonna be. People are gonna spring up and try and take advantage of that system. So there's no such thing as a perfect system. But I think we've said this before, both of us, that democracy is about as close as you're gonna get.
Whoa! I did not realize malarkey's a real word. Like, I just thought it was like, how people are like, it's redonkulous, right? Malarkey's malarkey's like a real thing. I've been using it correctly, just so everybody is aware. But I just had to Google it because I was like, I've been using this term a lot recently, and it actually has, I know that you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Malarkey is empty rhetoric or insincere or exaggerated talk. So anyways, I just thought that at least I am on the right track with my term malarkey. But I don't know if it's necessarily what I meant to use to describe the BC election. But in my head, it meant something like redonkulous. Because it's not ridiculous, because that's a real word, and I understand that that's a real word. But redonkulous, it's kind of like badonkadonk, how it's not really a word, but it became a word through use. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I just didn't know if you cared, if you ever would judge me for my use of the word malarkey, and I felt like I needed to judge myself for that. So
no, I would never judge you for the use of the word malarkey. I think that everything you just said was malarkey, but
maybe shenanigans is a better maybe. I mean malarkey shenanigans.
I mean, I think that the best term for it is naked power grab, but
okay, well, fair, yeah.
But
if you're gonna be all political,
we don't need to get into BC politics because our listeners definitely don't care about that. Let's talk about something geeky. Let's just hard right turn into nerdy stuff. But you know what? Actually, it's not we're not even gonna take. This is a soft right turn because we're gonna talk about The Boys. Let's talk about The Boys.
Oh yeah.
Because if you like this television program, which I absolutely love, and I know that you guys talked briefly about it.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time. It's kind of our unofficial catchphrase, but this is why genre storytelling is meaningful to Amanda and I, because within genre storytelling, you rope people in with the razzle dazzle of a super dude in an American cape, American flag cape, and then once they're in there, you go, hey, American nationalism is no different than German nationalism in the 1930s and 40s. Heads up. We're gonna get into some spoilers.
Did you watch the latest episode?
I'm all caught up. So here's the deal. There's no way that we're not gonna talk about The Boys for the rest of the episode. That's what we're doing. If you haven't watched The Boys, I didn't for a long time. I just started a week or two ago. I think 2 weeks ago. I watched the whole first season in a weekend. In really 2 days. It is. There's not a lot of episodes because I think the first season's 8 episodes, right?
Something like that. It's really manageable.
Yeah, and we're only up to, I think this week will be the 6th episode. So there's 5 episodes. So there's really not a lot for you to catch up on. Go watch it. Go watch it now and then come back to the podcast because we are going to go full spoilers. There's no way I can talk about this show without talking about everything.
And I mean, I will say I have nothing else to really talk about on this podcast except to say also go watch Enola Holmes because I quite enjoy it.
I really want to watch it. Hey, I'm going to ask you right before we get into The Boys.
Yeah.
Do you think it's okay to watch it with Cara?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
It's there's some fighting, but it's not gratuitous or anything like that. It's a very cute, it's sort of a cute, it's older. It's obviously older than her demographic, but I think in a Harriet the Spy kind of way, but better. Obviously a little bit.
Cool.
If Harriet the Spy was made in 2020 instead of whenever it was made back in the, I feel like it was the 90s. Anyways.
With Michelle Trachtenberg.
Yeah. But it's
Buffy's little sister.
Super cute. And Netflix did a campaign recently in the States. It keeps coming up on my feed where they put a bunch of statues of women around next to their famous older brothers. I thought it was kind of
nice.
a cute little but yeah, and I mean, I don't know, I don't think anybody asked for Henry Cavill to play Sherlock, and it kind of, I don't know, I'm curious to see what people think about Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes.
I think that a lot of people like it. That's the sense that I'm getting online, But
also, he's so Henry Cavill. It's great. I don't know. It's fun. Sam Claflin. I'm not good at pronouncing names. We've decided that. But he's anyways, it's a good cast and it's a fun show. And the lead, there's another boy in it that really reminds me of Timothée Chalamet. And I didn't know Timothée Chalamet's name before like a week ago when I started paying attention to the fact that Timothée Chalamet was in Dune, and then all these other things that are come out recently. And then anyways, so now he's on my radar. Sorry, that didn't neither here nor there. But anyways, also try to find time to watch Enola Holmes. It's very fun. Very cute. Millie Bobby Brown.
I'll do my best to watch it, and then we can talk about it in a little bit more depth. Okay. Yeah, let's get into that. Let's talk about The Boys, though. Okay, so from here on out, it's going to be spoilers. This show might be one of the greatest television programs ever made. That's how we're going to start this part of the conversation. I am hard pressed to think of another show that is as solid episode to episode as this has been.
Like, yeah, I had binged, so I watched all 4 episodes because I hadn't seen any of this season at once, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting really into the groove of this, like this is great. And I was like, how did I wait so long to watch this? Yeah. And so I was ready to talk about it last week, and then this week I was like, oh yeah, it's Friday, and of course my social media told me that The Boys was on, and I was like, sure, I'll watch that tonight. And it was such a solid individual episode. Like, I thought I was going to be so let down after having binged, like, 4 episodes, where I was like, maybe I just am into this because I was able to watch so many in succession. But the last episode was so good, so solid. Also, which Ashmore was in it? Because...
Sean. It was Sean.
It's movie Ashmore, not TV Ashmore. Because I was thinking about this, that I was like, technically, it would count as a movie quality, like... series, so I was like erring on the side of it being a Sean.
That to me is I think the key elements of this. I am so grateful for this show and for the fact that I didn't watch it last year when it was new, and that I saved it inadvertently. It was one of those things where it was like I wanted to watch it, but it's so hard for me to find time with all of the content that I want to watch, in particular the stuff that's, I talk about this all the time, the stuff that's like super violent or particularly mature, right? It's I have to find those moments.
Places, yeah.
And so I put it off. There were other things that I could watch with the girls in the room, or other things that took precedent, like The Witcher or whatever, that I was a little bit more into.
Fair. Yeah.
Because I will be honest, I have been aware of The Boys since the comic started. I was not a fan of the comic specifically because of the art style. So I never really got into it. And it was also at a time for me when there was a lot of that stuff. There was a lot of the like the postmodern superhero stuff. And for my money, it's like Watchmen always did it best, and everybody else was just doing a bad Watchmen impression of like, yeah, but what if the Justice League were bad guys though? Right? Like, and it's like there are so many of these takes. That to me, it's always like, well, nobody's gonna come near Alan Moore. I mean, like Garth Ennis probably gets pretty close, but nobody's gonna be quite as insightful or as mean-spirited as Alan Moore. So what's the point? And especially because some of the other stuff that I've read, like Irredeemable, I just did not like. So the whole idea of like, yeah, okay, and it's also like the whole like Superman's not interesting, so let's make him actually like an egomaniac, and then the character becomes interesting because Homelander is just Superman, right? These characters are always just Superman, but without the benefit of being Superman, because a lot of people think of that character as his powers and not as who he is, what he stands for. Obviously, we have certain specific feelings on that stuff. And so that these types of stories always rub me the wrong way. So I never read the comics. I was always kind of like, yeah, whatever. So when the show came around, I was like, Carl Urban, I'm going to have to watch this eventually.
Yep.
But, and then saw the promo for season 1 where he picks up the baby and uses the laser eyes. And I was like, okay, this looks pretty cool. Like this looks like something I could definitely get into. And like sort of put it on the list. It's also on Amazon Prime, which is just not, I'm just not in that app on a regular basis. But I ran out of stuff to watch, so I decided that I was going to watch The Boys, and I started, and I watched the first episode and was like, you idiot. Like, why have you been waiting so long? But as I was saying before, I'm also really glad that I waited until now, because to your point of it being movie quality, we are not going to get an MCU film in 2020. It's the first year since 2010 that they haven't released a Marvel movie. That's a big deal for me. It's
I know.
hard.
It's like a
difficult.
moment of silence for you.
It's difficult, and I don't even mean it like in jest. This isn't hyperbolic. Like, you can ask my wife. My life very much revolves around these movie releases. These things are important to me. I think you guys know that. You should by now. We get no Star Wars movie this year. We get no Marvel movies this year. Heck, other than Birds of Prey, we aren't even getting any DC movies this year.
Right.
Which, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally do that I would do to be able to watch Wonder Woman right now. Please, in my own home. Thank you.
Oh, I really want Wonder Woman.
I want to watch Wonder Woman.
It's coming out
1984
Christmas, though,
so
right?
bad.
It's coming out Christmas.
No, it's not coming out. Relax.
Are you sure?
It's
Are
not.
You sure?
Yes, they gave it a release date. Amanda, it's not coming out. Get it in your head. It's not getting. They are holding it for a theatrical release. There will be no major tentpole theatrical releases for the rest of this year.
So
Guaranteed.
So
Tenet made no money.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
No money. It made nothing. I'll bet you that Bill and Ted 3 made more money on video on demand than Tenet did in the theater. People certainly talked about it more and liked it more than they did Tenet.
I don't know. I heard enough people talking about Tenet.
I also think that Christopher Nolan's worn out his welcome. I think he's gone and Shyamalan'd himself, but
Shyamalan'd himself. I love it so much. I do feel bad for people that stopped listening, because this has been very unspoilery
so far.
Yeah. I feel like
they'll get to it eventually. Some people, you tell them that and then they listen anyways. You know who you are.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, it's not like it's gonna stop you enjoying the show from knowing some spoilers and things.
But yeah, so I mean, it has filled that hole in my heart, even though it is very much a subversive take on superhero stories. It's also not, because the boys themselves, the eponymous boys, are, although not heroes in the strictest sense, they're a bit more of a Guardians of the Galaxy band of heroes, or Suicide Squad or whatever. They are still a team of heroes. And they do have superpowers among them. So it's like, as much like it's subversive because the Justice League characters, the 7, are awful.
Right.
With the exception of Starlight. And Maeve is she's got an interesting story, and I'm curious to see where it's going to end. But where she's going to wind up and how that's going to play out. But and this week's episode was definitely on that track of don't get too comfortable thinking of her as a sympathetic character. Remember that she let all those people in that plane die. Right. She didn't do anything. She didn't stand up to Homelander. She's just as cowardly as everybody else, even though she could maybe stand up to him. I don't know. It's unclear. Power levels are not
really
very clear.
Yeah, it really is a little bit unclear.
But they don't need to be. It's not a big deal. But yeah, it regardless of the fact that the 7, the heroes that we're supposed to think are the greatest, are actually awful, and that's the whole kind of conceit of it. Huey and everybody else, like the rest of the boys, they are all heroes, and that to me is like even despite their flaws, they're the heroes that the world needs. The world just doesn't realize that they need them, right? And to me, it's almost like that almost kind of makes it better right now, just kind of in the climate that we're in the world that we're living in.
Right.
The idea that like we keep looking to characters like Homelander to save us, but they're not going to.
Right.
So it's gonna be regular guys like Huey, who are the everyman, who are actually going to save the world. And that moment in this past week's episode where they're both standing over him in the hospital bed, and Annie is kind of like, yeah, it's Annie, right?
Yeah.
She's like, neither of us deserve him, sort of thing. It's like, I don't know, like that just kind of really it hit me because it was such a great moment.
The thing for it too is that there's nothing inherently special about Huey.
No.
And he doesn't necessarily actually do anything. He just makes the other people around him not do crappy things.
Yeah.
Which is in and of itself, I think, pretty heroic. Like when you're surrounded by people that are like tend towards like violent natures and tend towards, I mean, except for Frenchie. I love him so much. He's such a kind soul and he's my favorite and I love him so much. Anyways, but like everybody, like it just, you sort of like look at that and you're like, what is it about Huey that makes him special to everybody? And I think it's just about the fact that...
they talk about it, right? And it's kind of been the focus of this season with him and Butcher, the whole thing about like, he's your canary, right?
Right,
and it's like, he's like if... that's when you know you've gone too far, and he'll stop you before you go too far. And then we get that great story about Butcher's brother, where it's like, who's very much like Huey, and that's kind of what's going on with the two of those characters and that dynamic, and the sort of deeper meaning behind it. And I love the fact that Huey doesn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
That's a story that we as the audience have knowledge of. And definitely, like, a few of the other characters have this internal knowledge of it. But
sorry, I thought that the aunt told Huey about this story, about this brother.
Wasn't she? Oh, maybe did she?
She was telling it to Huey, because Huey asked, he's like, "Who is so and so?" And then she told him the story.
Oh yeah. That like, but not the canary part. Not the canary. Part.
No, he doesn't know the canary thing.
Yeah.
And that I think is cool because that's for the people around him, right? For sure.
Yeah. That's you're right. You're totally right. But yeah, like it's there's just like he is an inherently good person. Mm-hmm. And it kind of is his powerlessness that makes that goodness shine, because if anybody has a right to be pissed off and angry, it's Huey, right? Like, the whole reason he's in this situation in the first place is awful and horrific, and an injustice. And yet, like, he kind of manages to find the bright side of a lot of stuff, and he brings them along with him on that ride. And it's, it's amazing that they can point it out and still maintain it, because I always find that, like, when that sort of thesis of a character or of a story gets pointed out, it tends to break it for me, because then it becomes very like, it's what I talk about with Christopher Nolan all the time, of like the Prestige, right?
Right.
It's the whole point of the magic trick. The second you know how the magic trick is done, it's not interesting anymore. Right. And the magic trick of Huey's character is that heart that he's got. Right. And now, like, that we know that, you should think, oh, like, now the character is ruined, like, because now we kind of know exactly how he's going to behave all the time. Granted, their solution to that, I think, was to take him out of the story for a minute.
And just see how,
and see what happens to everybody else without his influence. That's going to be...
But that also, the beautiful side about The Boys and what's so nuanced about it is specifically in that episode, it's about the extremes of it, right? On two sides, that it drove Annie to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the same goodness, the same desire, like, the same sort of like want for protection or want for people, it still led to violent like it's just such an interesting dichotomy where it's like at the end of the day, what is it that's really at the core? Like, what if it's not about not killing people, what is it actually about?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such an interesting part of that episode, is to see what balance actually means, right? And it's not necessarily about total goodness. And that's one of the things in The Boys that I'm really interested in when I'm watching it, is I'm like, there is no end game in this show that will be satisfactory, no matter what. Like, and also, like, let's get into real spoiler territory. Like, we're literally talking about a show about Nazis right now.
Yeah.
Like a show about how capitalism is holding up and propelling a force meant to obliterate a large portion of the world. And it just is it's so viscerally upsetting, and you're like, how do you root for these people that are terrible because they're just less terrible than the other people around them? Like, one of the greatest arcs is from the first season is Stupid the Deep, right?
Yeah.
How do you care about him by the end of it? Like, right? How do you take this character that's so
even his actions from the moment that we meet him are reprehensible.
Yeah.
And yet we are rooting for him in a way, at the same time as knowing the collective is not better.
Yeah.
But we hate Homelander and Stormfront right now so much, and Vought so much, that we're willing to entertain this idea that, like, that the collective can help take down the Seven, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way that it'll play out. I think that we'll get it won't really be a full on twist, but like I think that we'll sort of bend towards, like, no, the collective just wants the power that the Seven has, and once A-Train and the Deep are back on the Seven, they're just basically going to become the same. Like, Vought and the collective are going to become the same thing.
Completely forgot who you were talking about when you were talking about the collective.
The Church of the Collective?
Like,
yeah.
I know, but I was like, are you talking about, like, the collective anti-heroes? Like, who? But it's just, so you know, I just want to make it clear, I actually do not care about that part of the storyline in this season. I cared about his storyline last season.
Yeah.
When you add another, and I guess, again, I will, like, bring in my own personal biases into things, I am in no way fooled by the collective. Like, it is actually upsetting to me to see how you deal with different types of institutionalized organizations fighting for power and manipulating people. So I don't think in any way that the collective is something that I'm rooting for in my brain at all. I'm not thinking about them at all. I'm thinking about them as something that's distracting from the core storyline, but that will be manipulated by the boys potentially to get something that they need, right? Like,
my thing is that, and especially at the end of this episode, when Stormfront reveals, oh man, they do it. It's so good. It is so good. That moment is excellent. Her performance is incredible. The way that she slips in and out of the German accent, and the like that really, like, quiet passion that she delivers this speech. It's disgusting, but it's powerful, right? Like, you feel that she truly believes this stuff, and that this is a Nazi who was there. She was part of it. And by all accounts in this world, a very big part of it. And she's been biding her time. And from what we know of her, the way that she's using memes and stuff like that, like, she's very clever, very smart, very willing to do whatever it takes and compromise her own like outward facing morality all towards this one end. Like, she is a Nazi supervillain to a T. They do this great thing in this speech where and Homelander, I'm gonna start using some of these actors' names because they deserve the credit.
Homelander, did you see the meme where it's like there was an interview where he was it was
with
like behind
glasses
the scenes
and his hair down,
glasses and his hair down, and nobody could recognize him.
Yeah, Anthony Starr, he's so good.
Anthony Starr.
Anthony Starr.
Anthony, not Anthony's.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
He's so incredible. And his performance in this moment of, like, is he about to snap Stormfront's neck.
Right.
Right? Because it can go
Yeah.
either way. And the whole time she's talking, you're going, what way does he break?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
way is Homelander going to break? Because the nationalist in him could totally get behind what she's saying.
Yeah.
But what is America in
Yeah.
in the 2000s, right? Like at this point in time, is he actually going to look at this and go, no, that's not what America is, right? And stop her
And
here
is he
and now.
sort of upset enough about her for lying? And
Yeah.
is it like they planted
Yeah.
a few seeds in the beginning that he could be totally unhinged?
Yeah, and so you're just watching his face while she's talking. You know exactly where she's coming from. It's totally clear. But with him, you're like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then when he grabs her and kisses her, you're like, well, now you have to die. Like now there's no other, like, cause they've been playing with it, right? Of he's never been a sympathetic character, but they have definitely made you sympathize with him in moments, like when you see him as a child in the
Well, that's the
room.
beauty of it, right? When you understand where villains come from.
Yeah,
Right? Like that's what
yeah.
makes an interesting villain is if you understand why they made the choices that they made and how they became who they are.
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
they've done a great job with Homelander. You're never surprised by why he acts certain ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like you are always kind of like, yeah, it makes sense that they turned him into a sociopath, basically.
But
Like,
now from this point forward, I don't want to say that there's never anything a character can do.
but it makes you pretty irritable to
He's pretty far gone. It would take a lot to redeem this character, and it wouldn't be one thing.
But I don't think
it would
because
have
you
to
know
be
what's the
a
beauty-
series of things.
The
but,
beauty of this is that I don't think that they will, but I also don't think that we're going to get justice or that he's going to die. Like, that's one of the things that's really, like, upsetting to me is that I think in every world that I am part of currently, in the normal world, Homelanders exist and nothing bad happens to them.
Yeah,
Like
they
at
get
the
away
end
with
of the
it.
day, that he's gonna get away with it, and it's just because there's that enough calm. Like there's that beautiful moment where he imagines destroying the group of protesters, and you're like, it's just he'll never do that, and it's just.
Again,
it's just so close.
It's one of those moments where he's not sympathetic, but you do sympathize with him. And when he cuts down that hundreds of people, there's a I don't know. I guess I'll just use my I statements right now. I definitely feel that. I relate to that. I think that everybody has been in a moment where they're angry, right? Like that rage. And if you had that kind of power, it's like, what would you do with it?
That it's like,
Right?
How do you, especially that kind of
And
a person
holding
with
that
that kind
back.
of a power.
Yeah, holding that back and holding that at bay is such a relatable thing. Because for Homelander, it's using his heat vision to kill hundreds of people in a matter of seconds. For a regular person, it's yelling at your boss, right? Like
Or something.
like
the things, but it's the beauty of that moment where you're kind of like, I knew Homelander would crack, and you're feeling so vindicated. You're like, you had it coming, Homelander. Now everybody knows what you're like, and then he just didn't, and you're like, no, but he's worse than me. He would do it. He wouldn't just hold it in, and you're like, there's something so unsatisfying about that moment.
But here's the thing about Homelander. This is the key to the character, and this is the thing that nobody's figured out yet except for Stormfront. His image is everything to him.
Right.
It's everything, and I think the only way to defeat Homelander is to destroy his image. If he loses and pushing him down this path towards like this Nazi stuff, I think is the key to fulfilling that story. That like if that gets out to the world,
Right.
I think in this narrative
no
world
longer-
at least,
yeah.
like he's no longer he's no longer America, right?
Right.
And I mean, like, granted, we are living in a world right now where I think that maybe a lot more of America would be they would be behind a character like Homelander having those feelings, but I think that that's the key, and I see an end to his character not being that anybody manages to kill him. I don't think that they can, but I think like him leaving, very much a lot like Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, who he's just like, I'm done. This world is too far gone. It doesn't need me meddling with it anymore. I'm just going to go create a better world. And he just steps inside a globe and disappears and creates the DC universe. And that's canon.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah, that's canon.
Huh.
Yeah. It's dumb. It's dumb that's canon.
Yeah.
It's dumb. It's much better that it was like an inference of of going and creating a better world, but that's how they explained a bunch of New 52 stuff, and it's dumb. I don't like that they did it. Any case, I see him being like so dejected and heartbroken that he's lost the will of the American people, that he just leaves the planet. Like
But I don't think he can. I don't know. I just think I don't know.
I think that's the only way that you get rid of him. I think it's the only way you get rid of him. He flies himself into the sun.
I don't think we will get rid of him. That's the big thing for me.
Yeah, Eric Kripke is the showrunner. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He finished his storyline with Supernatural with season 5. Yeah. He told the story he wanted to tell, and then he said, "See you later, guys. I'm done."
Yeah.
And he walked away.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think he will finish this story.
Okay.
I think that he has an ending in mind, and I don't think that it involves Homelander being still a part of the story. I think that he'll get rid of Homelander in some way.
Well, I hope so.
I think that's the only end to the story.
I mean, yeah.
It's the only way that it can end. Whether Homelander decides to hang up the cape, or he literally leaves the planet, or they do manage to kill him because somebody else is as powerful as him or more powerful than him. Who knows?
Right.
I mean, like, the worst possible thing they could do is inject Huey with Compound V, and all of a sudden he's more powerful. But that's the sort of thing that J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio would do.
I really hope that's.
And then he'll just take 2 lightsabers and Dragon Ball Z Homelander to death. The Rise of Skywalker is a garbage fire. I feel like I have to say it every week on something.
Every week, yep. It's true. We have been podcasting for an hour, and I was promised an hour's worth of podcasting.
Yeah, you're right. We've been going for longer than an hour, I think. But I don't know. There's an end to this story. I don't think that Eric Kripke wants to be telling the boys stories for the rest of his career.
That's fair. But I really hope that there is something that's like comes positive out of this, because the story so far is just leaning towards, I don't know, at least none of the main heroes have died. That is something that I will give it. I didn't think that, like, when the brother came, I actually thought that they were going to kill her off too, and I'm pleased that they didn't, because I think she's such a core part of the character. I can't remember her name.
Kimiko. Kimiko. It would be so dangerous in the current climate, let's say, to be like, hey, we've got the one woman that's part of their crew, permanently part of their crew, and on top of that, she's an Asian character, and we're just gonna kill her off and replace her with a boy. That would have been that would have been poison for the show. That would have definitely poisoned the well. So I think that Eric Kripke is smarter than that, and I think that he's also a better person than that.
Yeah. She's also like I don't know. The characters are pretty fun, and I'm actually really interested to see what they do with Lamplighter. I think that that's an interesting.
Yeah, well, he's there now.
Yeah,
so
and I do quite enjoy both the Ashmore brothers, and so.
Yeah, but let's be real. You enjoy one of them more than the other, and it is Shawn Ashmore because he is better. He is. He is. There's a reason why he still gets work on a regular basis, and Aaron Ashmore pops up every once in a while.
Don't be so mean to Aaron Ashmore.
I'm not being mean. I'm just being realistic. I think that they're both fine. I don't think that Shawn Ashmore is an incredible actor.
No. I will say that
I think he's very cute. I think he's an adorable person.
Is this weird? I do find Shawn Ashmore slightly more attractive than Aaron Ashmore.
You're right.
And so
objectively, that's true.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that we're on the same page about the Ashmore brothers.
Look, on the off chance that Aaron Ashmore is listening to this, this is no hard feelings, and I don't think that we're saying anything that you don't already know.
But also, Jimmy is there's always a soft spot in my heart. I just wish that that character had been treated very differently on that show overall. So
you mean not retconned into not being the Jimmy Olsen that we thought that he was?
Basically, I don't know. I have so many problems with how Jimmy Olsen was treated.
Botched that character's storyline so hard that when Jimmy Olsen came back to TV, they were like, let's go a very different direction with this character. And not only was he a black guy, he became the Guardian. So, Jimmy on Supergirl is not Jimmy. He's James Olsen.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, much better character, a far superior character, in my opinion. But yeah, I love this show. I can't wait for the next episode.
Yes.
And I'm sure that'll be the case all the way until the end of the season. Although, like, we only got a couple more episodes left after this week.
Yeah, I think it's almost like coming to an end.
Yeah, so. And then we'll have to wait. But season 3 is in production, and
that's good.
And I actually know somebody who's working on it, so that's cool.
Is it? It's not in Vancouver though.
No, they shoot it in Toronto, but
I don't think I know that.
But John Gallagher, who's a concept artist in Vancouver. He's working on it. He's doing some concept stuff. He announced that on his Facebook page, like a week ago or something like that. So he's getting to do some superhero stuff again.
Well, I'm pleased that they're making another season. I think it's definitely television worth watching. I think it's important for us to deconstruct like hero narratives and understand that there is brutality and scariness and just like evil behind every facade, and that we just gotta like be careful. Going out into the world.
Yeah. I'm gonna give everybody some homework right before we end.
Ooh.
I am currently in the middle of watching it, and we talk about it a little bit on the uncut episode, the uncut version of this episode. But I'm gonna tell everybody, because we'll talk about it in the future. The Comey rule, or it's also known as what was the other title? A Higher Loyalty. This James Comey miniseries on Showtime starring Jeff Daniels. I think everybody should watch it. It's only around 4 hours total. It's 2-hour chunks basically. Yeah, everybody should watch it. It's I think very good and very measured, and not necessarily one side or the other, although it is very much anti-Trump. It's not, I would say it's not Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative in terms of the way that the story leans. I think the point of the story is that Donald Trump is bad for everybody.
Right.
And sort of going through that narrative and talking about that from the perspective of James Comey and everything that happened with the FBI in the lead up to the election and in the subsequent months after the election. So, I'm really enjoying. I watched the first 2 hours of it, and it's fantastic. Jeff Daniels is amazing. So everybody should watch it, because we're going to talk about it in a future episode.
It's also homework for me, just so everybody understands that this is not just you. I've got to watch this too.
Now that I've made it homework for everybody, Amanda absolutely has to do it.
I know. I don't like it when I'm on assigned reading.
You're gonna enjoy this though. You're really gonna like it.
It'll be. I'm excited to revisit Jeff Daniels.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I watched him in some stuff. So.
Cool. Well, that's it for the episode. That's it. We did it. We talked about way too many bummers and not enough fun stuff, but that's okay. Next week, let's try and be a little bit more focused on fun. Or next episode,
instead of talking about politics for an entire episode.
Yeah.
I feel like we always talk about politics.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Sorry, you know what you're in for, though.
It's an election year. It's unavoidable, and this might be this may be the most important election of our lifetimes
that we're living through. Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
It's kind of a big deal in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, some might have argued that the last election would have been the most important election that we lived through, and we all botched that one. So
if this one goes south the way the last one did, then yes, it will in retrospect be the first of these two that was the most important because it will have been us. That was the off ramp, and we missed it, and now we're on this ride for the rest of our lives.
Oh man, I hope that's not true.
Man. It's really something. It's really something to be alive for the downfall of an entire country. But hopefully Canada's okay.
Civilization as a whole too. Hey, on some positive things, we've been around for a real long time. Like humanity's existed forever. So
yeah, I think humanity will be fine. But
and I mean, I do want to just clarify. I understand that humanity has not literally existed forever. I was being hyperbolic.
And I will just say, like, we're in Canada. I know we're too close. We're closer to the American border than I am comfortable with at the moment with the way that things are going. But we are Canadian citizens, so we can move further north if we have to. But I will remind everybody that in the Hunger Games, Pan Am stops at the 49th parallel.
It sure does. That is correct.
And I mean, like, it depends on which version of the map you're looking at. Some of them kind of have a little bit of Canada in
but
there.
It's like Canada sort of said, no, thank you.
And I maintain in my headcanon, the rest of the world was definitely affected by climate catastrophe and has changed. But everybody else is more or less like continuing on with life and society. It's just America that turned into that turned into the Hunger Games of like let's slaughter children for entertainment in order to keep the proletariat in check. So that's where you're going, America. That's the track that you're currently on. Vote for Joe Biden so that you don't end up in the Hunger Games. Really, so that your children don't end up in the Hunger Games. And like, if you don't have children of your own, think of other people's children. Be a nice person for a change. And think about other people. No, our audience is a bunch of great people, and they're all going to do the right thing, and they're all going to be very, very awesome, and make sure that everybody else gets out to vote and offers rides and drives people and does the whole thing. So,
yeah,
cool. That's it for this week. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week.
Stay safe, everybody. Wash your hands and be kind to one another.
Follow the Thunderquack Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Thunderquack Podcast. You can support us in 3 ways. First, by heading to the podcast service of your choice and leaving a rating and review. Second, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merch from your favorite podcasts. And last but not least, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get cool rewards like early access, ad-free episodes, and extended episodes. The Thunderquack Podcast is the official podcast of thunderquack.com. Head to thunderquack.com to discover more great podcasts.